This is the Depth Mystic Community Podcast, episode 26. That's the original piece of music that came to me when I thought that I ought to express my mystic vision in terms of a video game. And it has the Joseph Campbell's hero's journey written all over it, as it were. You know, what is the end goal of the hero's journey? I'm not sure. I was so excited about Joseph Campbell, I just wanted to go on the hero's journey. I just assumed that the end goal would fall into place. And I'm doing what I can to make that happen. With me, as always, is our guest, Jungian Depth Mystic Zach Tolan. What's going on? This week's topic is something that's politically relevant because there are a bunch of anti-immigration enforcement protests going on. Yeah, I know. It strikes us as a little odd on the surface why somebody would be against immigration enforcement. Exactly. And so we're going to try to look into that and try to unfold the nature, I hope, of the identities of the two sides. Well, okay. We normally stay away from political stuff, but I guess it's inevitable that at some point we should talk about it at least a little bit. And I guess if that's what's on your mind, and it also has a little bit of intellectual subject matter, like philosophical content, if not depth mystic content per se, then what else are we going to do? We have to talk about the things that we're thinking about. Exactly. Anyway, so basically, there's some anti-immigration enforcement protests, and a woman was killed who was on the side of the protests by an immigration enforcement officer. Now, explain to me what's going on, because it strikes me as kind of silly that this would be the hill that you would want to die on, would be being against law officers finding illegal immigrants and removing them from the country. Well, yeah, it is a weird hill to die on. We can't assume necessarily that she was intending to die on that hill. I mean, it's quite possible that she was unwittingly in over her head and she had no idea that she would be dying that day. But the protest is nonetheless, we don't want law enforcement officers in our country to identify and remove immigrants who aren't supposed to be here. But by contrast, it is not hard to notice that once somebody is here illegally, it does seem weird for law enforcement to go out of their way to try to find them, just to remove them. Like, admittedly, they're not supposed to be here. But in a certain sense, it's too late once they're here. Actually, that's a good point. I mean, maybe if they really wanted illegal immigrants to not be here, which is to say not just cross the border without going through customs or an immigration or anything, just to walk in. If they didn't want people to do that, they should stop it at the border rather than, find them wherever they've settled down long after they've crossed over. Obviously, that would be a better approach. And that goes to raise the question, what kind of country is it that has let so many people in by walking in? That's almost like a country that doesn't respect itself. So a country is the people in it. A country is the bunch of people who happen to be on the land and who are part of the organized number of people that are known to be citizens of the country. And insofar as that's what a country is, then you're saying one with a porous border, one where people could just come and go as they please without any real enforcement. It's like a country that doesn't respect itself. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, obviously, if you let so many people in to begin with, you weren't a very self-respecting country, it seems to me. At least insofar as that's what a country is a bunch of people with citizenship that own and oversee the land, like a piece of land, a giant piece of land. I think I know what you mean. Why would they not keep the border secure the whole time? Why open the border and then go through a big ordeal of sending literally masked soldiers, essentially, to find the people afterward? I mean, is that a self-respecting country that is debating whether or not it should be allowing people to just walk into it or not? Like, the very fact that this is a debate shows we're not a self-respecting country. And I'm not even saying a country should respect itself. I'm not even claiming countries are a valid entity to begin with. Yeah, so it's a pickle. I mean, normally I'm the depth mystic. I'm the one offering like really controversial ideas, but you just brought it up. The whole question of what is a valid country? What does it mean to be a country, and why would you want one? But if you did want one, it would be a piece of land, and whoever the inhabitants of the land were at the time you decided that it was a country would constitute the country. If you got invaded by a whole different group of people, would the mere fact that those people crossed over mean that they were now part of the country? Is that what a country is? If that's what a country is, going back to the idea of self-respect, it doesn't seem like a very self-respecting country, at any rate. The country's just a piece of land, but it doesn't matter who's on it. The people are interchangeable. I assume that the citizens of such a country would not respect their leaders, and they would not respect the entity that their leaders claim to be their nation. So I guess if you want the citizens to respect the thing, you have to have some way of distinguishing who's a citizen and who isn't, which is better than are your feet standing on the piece of land. Again, insofar as a country matters at all. Okay, now that you've emphasized it, it's kind of crazy. Then we stop and think about it. Because very rarely do people seem to even ask, what is a country and why does anybody want to be a part of one to begin with? A lot of people seem to either assume their country, they just sort of assume it, which means they feel like it's a natural part of their sense of self, and therefore they don't question the nature of it philosophically. Or they find some other cause to adhere to, such as religion or international politics, and thereby reject the importance of their national identity, at least ostensibly. For example, the international socialist, the people who believe that the only solution for mankind is a worldwide communist revolution, by their very nature, they would be denouncing countries as like a false form of identity. Well, that's kind of crazy. I mean, most people, it doesn't even occur to them that they shouldn't have a country at all. But at the same time, there are a lot of ideologies, the universal brotherhood of man, the Christian idea of whoever will believe will have eternal life. So Christianity doesn't really acknowledge nations. So there are a lot of ideologies and belief systems that make the nation a secondary thing. So you could easily imagine that a Christian would feel more solidarity with an illegal immigrant who was also a Christian than they would with the fact that they had a country and that immigrant wasn't a citizen of the country. There's a lot of nuance, but I do think that you can accurately describe a lot of the nuances and get a real sense of what's going on if you are diligent enough. Because remember, we're talking about a bunch of citizens basically of the left wing, political left, who are really excited about protecting illegal immigrants from the soldiers who are trying to find them and remove them. on its face, it's a really odd thing to die for. Honestly, I don't know why you would want to die for that cause. But that said, it doesn't mean it's not a valid cause from their perspective. Again, maybe they don't want anybody to have a country at all. Maybe the nation as an entity is irrelevant to them, and they think, well, we have solidarity with all poor people. Well, these people are oppressed, therefore they are our people. Damn your borders. And then, of course, the people who are really excited about the immigration enforcement, they seem to have a problem too, because, why are you so excited about it? A lot of these people, they already got in. They're already living here. Now, again, there might be some criminal activity, which is of general concern, no matter who's doing it. So prosecute them for being criminals, not for being illegal immigrants. And then there's what is the net effect of huge numbers of illegal immigrants being in the country? And I can easily imagine that there's some economic effect. There would be low-paying jobs that would be going to people who are documented and legally allowed to be here as opposed to just walked in. But again, I don't know. I think, let's call them the nationalists, the people for whom the citizenship and the nation is the relevant form of identity. I can see that they are overplaying their enthusiasm to some extent, because there is something about solidarity between the poor. The poor people of America are not able to afford to have children anymore. That's apparent by the birth rates and the economic conditions and the culture. Yeah, being poor in America is probably a more solid basis of identity for the people than is whether or not you're a citizen. Or at least in a lot of ways. And also, what if your nation is ruled by corrupt leaders anyway, who aren't interested in the well-being of the people, which is an extremely plausible hypothesis? Well, then solidarity with your nation is not justified, insofar as that's the case. These soldiers are being sent in not necessarily to make the nation a better place, but simply to, put on the appearance, perhaps, of making the nation a better place. Suppose we successfully got rid of all the illegal immigrants. Would we not still have a huge boatload of problems that we had to deal with? Most importantly, the fact that, the average citizen can't reproduce his own people. The population rate is way below replacement at this point. Yeah, that's a good point. But that does speak to, why would you want to protest soldiers removing illegal immigrants when, even if they got rid of all the immigrants, wouldn't the poor people of the country, the middle class, which is no longer the middle class, is now the impoverished class, wouldn't we still need to try to solve that problem, regardless of whether there were a lot of illegal immigrants here or not? Might not that be a better hill to die on? Well, yeah, it is kind of silly, I think. It's not that there isn't some justification for opposing the specific law enforcement action we're talking about, but doing it so vehemently does seem kind of crazy to me. But going back to the appearance of a law enforcement body doing something good for the country, but doing it in a kind of gang-like way, they're really tough soldiers who are doing it. This is not a delicate, polite process. A lot of times these guys are intimidating. And to have a bunch of intimidating soldiers pushing their weight around, even if you can justify it, it does generate a feeling of, who is this gang? Who are these stormtroopers? And what about our lives requires them to be here? And the thing is, our government is kind of corrupt. And I have no true confidence that our stormtroopers are the good guys. I don't think the protesters are the good guys either. I wish both of them would focus on more important things. Most especially, how are we going to restructure society so that regular people can have a life worth living, essentially? where they have like a community and a basic sense of belonging and some kind of economic prosperity. You know, the old American style middle class dream of just sort of having a life, but add to that more of a community sensibility so that you're not just a consumer of products living by yourself, getting fat on corporate greed, but rather you have a village, you have something you actually belong to. I think that's what we should be focusing on. Yeah, it's all interesting. Before we stop, I do want to bring in something that is actually a depth mystical point. Because humans of all civilizations have always needed a shadow class. They've always kind of needed a not them class, an other, in order to strengthen the bonds amongst themselves. Like in India, they had the untouchable class. And in almost every other civilization, in order to form tribal bonds amongst each other, people have often had to decide who the other is, who the not them is. And if we got rid of all the illegal immigrants, we would still be faced with the problem of who is the not us class? Who is the shadow, the dark, the untouchables? Because there's a problem in human nature that we haven't yet solved, which is we don't know where to put the shadow in a way that's actually fair, in the least harmful way. Wait, so you're talking about the shadow in the context of this issue? Well, yeah, the shadow comes up everywhere, but in this one, it comes up particularly with regard to, let's state it clearly, the validity of using an undocumented group of people as your shadow other in order for you to form a sense of identity. Like, look at the jobs they typically do. They're jobs that the average American doesn't want to think of himself as having to do, like picking vegetables, for example. I'm talking about the mass numbers of illegal immigrants that are used in order to pick crops. Our current sense of collective identity as highfalutin Americans, in many ways, prohibits us from thinking of ourselves as the ones who have to pick the vegetables too. Now, hypothetically, it could all be American citizens, like fully documented. There's no under-the-table dealings. They'd probably have a lot more rights and get paid a lot more if they did, and vegetables would be more expensive. But that could be how it works. But then we'd still have to have our shadow. You know, the human instinct for needing that other to sort of dump its darkness onto would remain nonetheless. So you're saying that the shadow is a fact of human nature that needs a solution and yet doesn't have a solution in our society that we all can agree is sort of acceptable. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. And that would persist even if we didn't have any illegal people here at all. Our instincts would still try to find some dark class of people to project our darkness onto. The problem of the shadow has yet to be solved. And it's worse because it's yet to even be acknowledged as what's really going on. Yes, there's real economic problems. I'm not pretending those don't exist, but to ignore the psychological problem is ignoring a huge piece of what really needs to be faced, in my opinion. And that's how you bring depth psychology, or as we now call it, depth mysticism, to this discussion. Okay, well, thanks. That does add the depth mystic element. And that will do it for episode 26. Leave a comment in one of the discussion forums, and we'll see you next week.